The shocking fate of the man who disregarded the chosen one. A biblical tale unveiled. Few knew what truly happened that night. The moon hung heavy, casting ghostly shadows across the ancient paths of Jericho. It was a time of miracles, of signs that sent shivers down spines. Yet, in the midst of all that mystique, one man chose to turn away. His name? Achan. He could have walked in the light, but opted instead for darkness. What was it that tempted him so? In the heart of Israel, they had just conquered the mighty city of Jericho. Crumbled walls lay around them, remnants of divine intervention. It was not just a victory, it was a promise fulfilled. The air crackled with excitement, and yet, Achan felt a nagging discontent. Was it fear, guilt, or something more insidious? Surrounded by victorious brothers and jubilant sisters, his heart pounded like a war drum. In his mind, the glory echoed like thunder. Achan's eyes wandered, searching the spoils of war: gold, silver, precious garments. He felt a magnetic pull towards their gleam, something unholy sparking inside him. This could be his moment, a chance to rise above the rest, to be more than a mere soldier. But wasn't stealing from the divine mandate the gravest sin? Those treasures belonged to God, yet Achan, consumed by greed, could not resist. He wrestled with himself, a storm brewing in his soul. Could he hide his theft? How many had committed worse sins and escaped unscathed? These thoughts danced chaotically as he tucked the stolen treasures away, buried deep beneath layers of earth, a pit of secrets and lies. All around him, the faithful were breathing sighs of relief and gratitude. How could he feel so alive yet so dead inside? Then came whispers, the eerie kind, carried on the wind, rustling leaves and creating shadows in the flickering firelight. A heavy tension hung, thick as fog, amongst the tribes. Murmurs spoke of a curse that followed a sin, a God who watched with piercing eyes. But Achan brushed off the warnings. After all, who would suspect him? On the dawn of the next battle, disaster struck. Israel turned from winners to losers, the fields stained with the blood of their own. Panic swept through the ranks like wildfire. What is happening? They cried. Is God no longer with us? The air was thick with despair, confusion swirling among them, spirits crushed. With each passing moment, the consequences of Achan's choice grew heavier. The sun felt like a cruel spotlight on him. Would anyone discover his crime? The weight upon his chest tightened. Voices grew louder, accusing whispers now directed towards him. Suddenly, all eyes were on Achan. How could he escape the ruin he had unleashed? Now, the question loomed heavily. Would he confess, or will he dig deeper into his abyss? As leadership crept closer, fear gripped Achan. Would he betray his own soul, or face the truth? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the sun rose over the hills, illuminating the troubled camp of Israel, Achan stood at the precipice of his own soul. Every dawn brought light, but this one felt like an omen, an impending reckoning cast in shadows. The whispers of defeat filled the air, carrying with them a haunting refrain of accountability. The stolen treasures lay heavy on his conscience, far heavier than the golden weights he coveted. Beneath the surface of his heart, the tempests of doubt and fear clashed violently. Fear of exposure clawed at him, while an insatiable hunger for those precious spoils gnawed with equal fervor. Was this God's plan? He wrestled silently, looking upon his brothers, each face filled with confusion, pain, and despair. They wouldn't understand. They can't see what I've done. He took a deep breath, steeling himself against his own moral failings, clinging to the risk that perhaps silence would shield him from scorn. Yet, the air felt thick with the weight of forgotten promises. As the leaders gathered to seek divine counsel, Achan felt the pull of judgment both from men and from his own heart. With each prayer lifted, he caught the echoes of accusation within himself, drowning in the thrumming of remorse. How could divine favor, once shining, now detach itself from the faithful? Could his sin truly be the source? Joshua, the commander appointed by God, raised his voice above the murmurs of despair. Israel, we have sinned. Someone among us has taken from what belongs to the Lord. We cannot stand before our enemies until this sin is dealt with. His words rang through Achan's marrow, striking deeper than fear itself. The path to conflict lay before him. The choice loomed as large as the walls of Jericho had once stood as the leaders cast lots, an ancient method to discern the divine will. Achan's heart raced. Each draw of the lot felt like a hammer striking an anvil, resounding through his very being. What will they do if they find me? Panic threatened mastery over reason. The scarlet thread of his actions wove itself into every fabric of his life, binding him in desperation. The lot fell trembling upon Achan's own tribe, then upon his family, finally resting like fate itself upon him. Silence enveloped the gathered, an all-consuming void filled with unspoken accusations and unraveling trust. Achan stood before them, a target now of divine scrutiny. Was this the fate he had sown for himself? Before him, the eyes of his kin awaited a confession, but the grip of secrecy clung tightly to his lips. Why have you brought disaster upon us? Joshua's voice bore the weight of the nation's pain, reverberating through Achan's spirit. There was no more turning back. He felt as if the walls of Jericho had collapsed once more, but this time upon his own heart. Truly, I have sinned against the Lord, Achan finally managed, each word a trembling admission of guilt. But beyond the confession lay a deeper mystery. What drove this man, a soldier molded by faith and trials, to betray his people in pursuit of hollow treasures? Was it a moment of weakness, or was he a vessel chosen to reveal the darker corners of the human spirit? As he recounted the events leading to his downfall, each revelation tasted bitter, yet it echoed with the profound weight of truth. The elders listened intently, and as the reality of his actions washed over the group, a chasm formed between Achan's selfish desires and the collective spirit of Israel. Could God redeem such a heart now so burdened? In the depths of Achan's confession arose an unsettling question. Was he silently chosen by fate itself to reflect the frailty of human nature? Or would his demise become a warning for generations? They stood on the precipice of a decision that would alter their path forward, a path that navigated the treacherous waters of sin, faith, and divine justice. What lies in the hearts of men, pushing them toward the abyss of greed? Is it merely a moment's folly, or a reflection of the deeper battles waging within? As the sun continued its slow ascent, drawing light through the valley, the air felt heavy not only with the weight of Achan's sins, but with the divine presence pressing in upon the camp. The murmurs of anxious whispers grew into a chorus of confusion, swirling around the assembly. The gravity of the moment hung palpably. It was as if the very earth was holding its breath, awaiting a decision that could shift the balance of Israel's future. Joshua, with resolute dignity, stepped forward, his heart heavy yet steadfast. He bore the mantle of his leadership and the burden of divine command. Achan, he spoke, his voice steady yet tinged with sorrow. Give glory to the Lord God of Israel, and make confession unto him. Tell me now what you have done, hide it not from me. The command felt laden with both authority and compassion, inviting Achan to reveal not only his actions but the strife within. Facing the assembled nation, Achan trembled, not merely from fear of retribution, but from the weight of a revelation dawning within him. He was a representation of every man's silent battle against the allure of treachery, a testament to the shadows that creep in the corners of every heart. But could he verbalize the turmoil? The love of family, the longing for approval, the insatiable chase for more, all of it pulled him down a dark path, leading him away from the sacred commandments handed down by God. That I saw the spoils, a beautiful mantle from Shinar, and 200 shekels of silver, and a wedge of gold of 50 shekels in weight. I coveted them and took them. Behold, they are hidden in the earth in the midst of my tent. He confessed, each word heavier than the last. As he spoke, the realization struck him. He was not just revealing sin. He was pulling back the curtain on his own soul, exposing the frailty and weakness that led him astray. As the community listened, Achan's confession transformed into a mirror, reflecting their collective fears and desires. Were they so different from him? Each person bore seeds of internal conflict. Had they not all faced temptations, perhaps not of a gold wedge but of pride, ambition, or distrust? Joshua signaled to the men who would search Achan's tent. They moved swiftly, an array of doubt piercing through the solemn air, reflecting the turmoil in Achan's heart. What would they find? An affirmation of judgment, or a testament of hope that could mend borders broken by sin? In that moment of suspense, Achan considered the path ahead, a choice now laid bare. The heaviness of his decision bore down with clarity. This was not merely about the material wealth he once coveted, but about a profound spiritual dissonance within himself and his people. How could he, a child of God, allow greed to overpower the covenant? As the men returned with the hidden treasures, a tangible silence fell upon the assembly. The glittering gold and silver stood out against the dusty ground, nearly mocking the sorrow in Achan's heart. What had he gained? Just mere objects of desire turned burdens of shame, now placed before an entire nation. And yet, beneath the stark reality of the moment lay another unanswered question. Was Achan's path of transgression predetermined, or did he wield the power of choice all along? In every human heart lies the capacity for faith and for failure. What unseen forces had conspired within him, leading to this catastrophic moment? Was he merely a casualty of fate, or did he embody deeper contradictions that spoke to the nature of humanity itself? As Achan stood in this painful reflection, the weight of his actions unfurling around him, one thought lingered insistently in the air. In confronting our deepest failures, do we reveal our true selves, or merely the shadows that dwell within? The silence that enveloped the crowd felt almost suffocating. Achan stood before them, stripped of pretense, yet a part of him remained shackled to the flimsy desires that had led him astray. The treasures, now exposed to the light, reflected not only the wealth he had sought, but also the ruin he had invited into his life and his community. As Joshua approached, the gravity of the situation deepened. His heart echoed the cries of the people for justice, but more than that, his spirit wrestled with compassion for a brother lost in darkness. "Why have you troubled us?" he asked, sorrow mingling with resolve. "The Lord will trouble you this day." With those words, his voice resonated through the valley, as if calling forth the spiritual forces at play, awakening the dormant energies of consequence and redemption. Achan watched helplessly as the eyes of the assembly shifted from him to the spoils, a judgment forming in their minds like the swell of a storm brewing on the horizon. Those glances were piercing, reflecting not just anger, but disappointment, the kind born from familial ties severed by betrayal. Among them, Achan's own family loomed, faces marked with a mixture of fear and disbelief, not yet aware of the depths of his transgression. The men who discovered the treasures had returned, and the atmosphere pulsated with tension. Each footstep sounded like a drum, beating out the rhythm of fate. They awaited Joshua's next command like soldiers at the edge of a battlefield. "Take Achan, and the silver, and the garment, and the wedge of gold, and bring them up to me," Joshua instructed, his voice unwavering. As Achan moved, dragged by the unseen hands of consequence, he felt the weight of each step. With each advance, he relived the moments of greed that had trampled upon the sacred commandments, moments where a fleeting desire had overrode the eternal promise. But as they reached the valley, a new landscape emerged in his heart, one painted with the colors of regret and revelation. As Joshua gathered the people around, he raised his voice. "This is what the Lord God commands. The one who sins bears the burden of their iniquity." Achan's gaze fell to the ground. Yet he sensed eyes upon him, not merely spectators of his descent, but witnesses to a profound truth that echoed through generations. They all carried burdens that demanded acknowledgement and repentance. "Israel has sinned," Joshua proclaimed, and a quiver rippled through the gathered multitude. What Achan had done was not solely his transgression, but a fissure that had threatened the very foundation of their covenant with God. Within the silence that followed, the community reflected upon their unity, their strength forged through shared sacrifice and the suffocating weight of one man's greed. But the confrontation prompted something deeper within the hearts of his fellow Israelites. Was it possible that their collective strength could withstand the shadows of an individual's choice? Did Achan's sin ripple outwards, threatening to drown them all? Or could his act become a catalyst for transformation? As the assembly processed the moment's gravity, there lingered an unsettling thought. Was not Achan's plight a foreshadowing of humanity's eternal struggle? In their own lives, had they not all wrestled with desires, battling an internal war between divine command and earthly temptation? Questions arose like the morning mist, hovering between the earthly and the ethereal, asking what this encounter might teach about accountability, about community, and the threads of connection that bind each heart to another. Even in sin, might there be a pathway to grace? As Achan faced judgment, another silence fell upon the crowd, ripe with anticipation and reflection. In moments of despair and consequence, can the sacred and the profane coexist, or do we forever stand divided by our choices? The answers felt just beyond grasp, shrouded in the spiritual mysteries that shimmered like the treasures that had led him astray. What pathways lay before them now, and who else might heed that call to genuine reflection? The air hung heavy with breathless anticipation, 1,000 hearts beating as one, united in silent inquiry. Achan stood at the precipice of despair, aware of the heavy burden he carried, not just upon his back, but within the very fabric of his being. Each flash of memory tore at him, the golden sheen of treasures, the secretive whispers of greed, and the haunting void now echoing in his soul. Joshua's face bore the weight of leadership, his brow furrowed not in wrath, but in a profound understanding of the struggles of man. He raised his hands, palms facing the people, inviting them to ponder the translates of sin. The Lord's justice does not come in a solitary blow. It is a wave, a current that draws all into its depths. Ponder, O Israel, upon the nature of your bonds. His words hung in the air, stretching beyond the immediate moment, calling to those gathered to reflect on their shared history. Did their forefathers not stand before great trials, each victory over adversity marking a step down the path? The echoes of Jericho still reverberated, a testament to their shared faith and obedience. Yet here, they faced the dark mirror of that unity, witnessing how one misstep could fracture what was meant to be strong. Achan's family met his gaze. A mixture of accusation and anguish danced across their faces. They were not merely observers in this tragedy. They were participants in a deeper narrativian narrative woven by divine purpose and human fallibility. He remembered the laughter shared in happier times, moments now tinged with the bittersweet knowledge of betrayal. How could he reconcile these friendships, these blood ties, in the wake of his choices? In the midst of the quiet chaos, a voice broke through, trembling yet firm. But how do we discern the one from the many? How must we act, O Joshua, to ensure our path is true? An elder spoke, his wisdom a stark contrast to the youthful fervor of the moment. The words echoed back to Achan like a beckoning call, urging deeper contemplation. The crowd leaned closer, yearning for guidance, seeking the divine thread in the fabric of their collective fate. Joshua exhaled slowly, as if inhaling the very essence of Israel's history before responding. Each must search their hearts, lest our own desires lead us astray, as Achan's did. We stand together, a tapestry of trials and triumphs. One errant thread can unravel our entire design. Will you each lay bare your intentions and confess what lies within? For only through honesty shall we find healing. And with that, a whisper of transformation began to circulate, soft yet insistent, like the first light of dawn pushing through the shadows. Men and women stepped forward, some with heads bowed, some with trembling hands raised, all yearning to shed their smallest sins, their private transgressions, as if each confession could stitch back the fabric of their community. Achan stood as a silent observer to this unfolding redemption. He felt a strange mix of jealousy and hope, watching as his kin laid bare their struggles. The burdens they bore were akin to his, yet they were not alone in their fight. In this moment, the walls of isolation he had built around himself began to crumble. Could he dare believe that even in his failure, he might serve as an example of the greater truth? As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, painting the horizon with hues of orange and gold, Joshua turned his attention back to Achan. Is there any word from you, O Achan? You stand before us, the man whose actions have drawn this darkness upon our people. Speak, and perhaps in your truth, we shall find a way forward. Achan felt his muscles tense, a flood of emotions rising to the surface as the assembly watched him with a mixture of disdain and pity. What could he possibly say? Could he voice the deeper longings in his heart, the unintended yet powerful lessons hidden in the shadows of his choices? As he took a crooked breath, words eluding the grasp of his lips, he wondered if his voice could carry a weight of grace amidst the judgment. Could honesty pave the way for redemption? Would his acknowledgement of failure illuminate the path for others as well? As uncertainty wrapped around him like a cloak, he remained suspended at the crossroads of despair and hope, pondering how might one man's plight resonate through the ages, continuing a dialogue that reached far beyond him, echoing into the hearts of all believers. As the sun surrendering to the horizon cast elongated shadows upon the gathered people, the weight of silence pressed heavily against Achan's chest. The air, thick with unspoken words, mirrored the depths of his turmoil. He could feel eyes keenly resting upon him, not just the piercing gazes of the crowd, but the watchful presence of the divine, a subtle assurance that led him forward onto this path he remained hesitant to tread. The very nature of his sin had shaken the foundation of their journey, a journey begun with such divine promise. Yet, enveloped within their shared struggle, he sensed a current running deeper, shared humanity woven into their collective story. Each soul present was bruised yet yearning for healing, an intertwining reflecting both the fallibility and the strength within their community. Joshua, Achan finally whispered, his voice trembling as if standing at the edge of a precipice, I wish I could undo what has been done. But it is not merely my actions that burden us. It seems that in succumbing to my desires, I have flung open a door for doubt and fear. His words hung delicately in the air, a fragile truth hanging in the balance. Joshua stepped closer, the compassion in his gaze igniting a flicker of courage within Achan. Then speak, Achan. What led you to such choices? What shadow clawed at your heart? The weight of the question delved far into Achan's memory, a vision of gold glimmering like stars, the immediate gratification shadowing the merit of a faithful journey. It was not merely greed, though that seed took root within me. It was fear, perhaps, a fear of inadequacy, a longing for acknowledgement. In my heart, I coveted what had not been given. In striving for my wants, I neglected the voice of God and the calling upon my life. The crowd shifted, murmurs rippling like water disturbed by a stone. Within Achan's confession lay not just the admission of guilt, but an acknowledgement of the human desire that propelled so many towards their own hidden sins. Their eyes, once set on judgment, now reflected a something deeper, a connection, a recognition of how easily even the strongest could falter. Joshua, sensing a shift, spoke softly yet with conviction. In this moment of honesty, we are reminded that we are not so different from one another. In Achan's plight, our own struggles find resonance. Each of us has followed our own whispers of temptation in silence, unnoticed until the shadows cast by our choices finally touch others. Can we not share in this truth? A profound silence descended, as voices previously lifted in repentance now turned inward, contemplating their own battles. Achan felt the burden of his sin transform, pooling not just at his feet, but spreading through the congregation, intermingling with the sins they had kept hidden away. Amidst the muted turmoil of emotions, regret, sorrow, understanding can contemplated anew the very nature of transgression. Was it strictly a matter of punishment and justice, or was it also a calling to communal introspection? Through the fractures of his mistakes, might a deeper unity emerge? Each member of the assembly wrestled with these questions, the deeper resonance of Achan's failure lifting the weight of shame, stirring within them the call for collective honesty. As dusk settled in, casting a blanket of starry twilight across the desert sky, Joshua lifted his hands once more, his silhouette blending into the deepening hues of night. Let us come together, not to judge Achan alone, but to examine how we might comfort and restore one another. For even in sin, there exists a seed of transformation. What blossoms within the cracks of a broken heart can be a gateway to newfound growth. As Achan absorbed the gravity of Joshua's words, a weightiness began to unfurl within him. Was this the divine mystery painted upon their struggles? Could vulnerability unearth a path towards something greater, shared lesson threaded through human experiences of failure and grace? As those thoughts swirled, Achan considered one final spark of hope. What if this moment became a beacon for generations? An echo amplified through time, inviting others to reflect on their own journeys of transgression and redemption. Perhaps in this collective reckoning, the thread of their story would intertwine with the divine, forever illuminating the intricacies of being falling and rising. Together he lingered on this thought, uncertain yet yearning. How might this shared story transform hearts beyond their desert encampment into a legacy that honored unity and grace, reminding all that imperfection is not the end, but the beginning of a sacred conversation? A hush fell over the camp as Joshua's words settled into the hearts of the people. The flickering flames cast shadows that danced and shifted, obscuring the faces that had once held judgment but now revealed deep layers of humanity. Achan felt the palpable weight of their collective gaze, no longer a burden but a shared awareness that bound them together. As the night unfurled its dark cloak, the thoughts of the assembly morphed into a murmur of confessions broken, yet hopeful. A woman stepped forward, her voice quivering. I, too, have lived in the shadows, yearning for others to witness my struggles but afraid of rejection. Her vulnerability sparked further confessions, like kindling igniting a fire. Sons and daughters contributed their own tales of fear, envy, pride, each weaving a tapestry of their shared frailty. Joshua listened intently, his heart swelling with a profound mixture of sorrow and gratitude. This is the essence of our journey, he proclaimed, to walk together in the light of our truths, to embrace not just the victories set before us, but the wounds that unite us in our humanity. Achan, amidst the communal legislation of hearts, began to ponder the significance of vulnerability within a faith journey. Was it possible that their very weaknesses served as bridges connecting the faithful in ways strength never could? He felt the stirrings of hope blooming within him, a gentle reminder that perhaps their shared confession allowed room for God's redeeming grace to flow freely among them. Yet, just as a new light began to break through the gathering shadows, a figure appeared at the edge of the camp, a lone woman whose expression was cloaked in uncertainty. The low glow of the fire illuminated her face, revealing eyes that shimmered like troubled waters. A gasp rippled through the crowd. It was her, Rahab from Jericho, the woman of the crimson cord. She approached cautiously, her heart racing with trepidation. "Please, let me join this assembly," she implored. "I come not to disrupt, but to seek understanding. My past is riddled with choices that echo through the chambers of my heart, and though I am not one of you, I have longed for the same redemption." Achan felt a shiver trace its way down his spine, recognizing the mirrored reflection of suffering that existed between them. Her presence served as a ripple in the gathering, a reminder that the narrative of sin and redemption echoed far beyond the boundaries of their camp. "Rahab," Joshua responded with kindness, "your courage to confess your desires and fears is a gift to us all. If we are to heal, we must welcome not just the righteous, but all who ask for mercy." The fire's warmth enveloped them, igniting a new chapter in their unfolding saga. As Rahab shared her story, it interwove with Achan's tales of lives once lost to the shadows, but now stepping into the illuminating grace of communal acknowledgement. In that moment, Achan realized that the boundary between the chosen and the outsider was far subtler than he had ever understood. The communal fabric of their faith journey stretched wider than mere laws and lineage. It spun from shared struggles and revelations that knew no hierarchy. Yet, as the conversations deepened, Achan's heart was tugged with conflicting truths. While the gathering surged with a newfound unity, he could not shake the shadow that still loomed over his transgression. Would this act of vulnerability lead to salvation for him and the others, or was there still a reckoning yet to come? In the profound stillness following Rahab's confession, Achan felt the weight of these questions pressing upon his spirit, intertwining hope and uncertainty. How could he find peace when the echoes of his actions continued to ripple towards others, bringing pain alongside the promise of shared grace? As the stars shimmered above a tapestry of divine promise and sat on the edge of resolve, would he ever unravel the deeper purpose of his sin? And in this intricate dance of failure and redemption, how might the story they were weaving together illuminate the path for those yet to come, allowing their confessions to turn into beacons of hope amid strife? As the night enveloped the camp in its deep silence, the embers of the fire crackled softly, mirroring the flickering emotions of those gathered. Achan's heart swelled and constricted in equal measure as he took in the profound interconnection of the testimonies surrounding him. It was a tapestry woven from the threads of pain, hope, and redemption, yet the shadow of his own sin lingered in the backdrop, a constant reminder of the price he had paid and the price still to come. Rahab stepped further into the light, her voice steadying as she shared, "In the walls of Jericho, I made choices that betrayed my people and my own identity. But faith has been a sudden storm, sweeping away the remnants of the life I once knew. I long for a place where I can belong, to find purpose beyond my past." A murmur of understanding rippled through the assembly, resonating as the confession washed over them like a cleansing rain. Joshua, with a knowing gaze, addressed Rahab, "You are welcome here, where the very essence of our gathering is rooted in truth and grace. Through sharing, we become stronger, less burdened by the weights we carry alone." His words ignited a fire within them, one that spoke of unity amidst chaos and transformation from the past. As Achan listened, he was struck by the tender vulnerability displayed before him, a stark contrast to the armor he wore to shield himself from judgment. In each story, a filament of despair intertwined with hope, crafting a delicate balance that made them more than mere tales of sorrow. They were invitations to explore the depths of God's mercy. Yet, even as he sat wrapped in this new awareness, a whisper of doubt gnawed at Achan's spirit. Would admitting his transgression, his undeniable betrayal of God's commandments, jeopardize the burgeoning sense of community? Would he be thrust back into the shadows he had tried so fervently to escape? The very thought gripped him with fear, a cloak of hesitation that felt tighter than any before. As the assembly began to evolve, voices joining in a chorus of confessions, a profound realization dawned upon him. They were not gathering to judge, but to help mend the frayed edges of their souls with the thread of mutual understanding and grace. But still, Achan wrestled with the inability to articulate his truth, fearing the liberation that would come with it. How could he take part in this beautiful union while harboring a secret that threatened to sever the tender bonds being woven? Suddenly, a voice rose above the gentle murmursy young man, his sincerity bright as the dawn. "I, too, have waited in silence. I have lived amongst the blessings while concealing my envy and greed. I hoped that no one would see my heart's darkness." There was a gasp and a ripple of recognition. Here was another soul unshackling his burdens, pouring forth his vulnerabilities into the community's chalice. Achan observed the reaction of the others. Instead of disdain, there was acceptance, a flood of compassion that seemed to wash away their reservations. In that moment of shared humanity, a quiet pressure began to build within him, urging him to unearth the weight he held close. Maybe there was strength in weakness, a solace found not in self-condemnation, but in the camaraderie of their struggles. But as dawn approached, with its promise of a new day, doubt clouded the burgeoning courage. How could a confession born of brokenness offer healing for others when it was rooted in a sin that still bore consequences? The thought ached in his chest, the weight of unresolved tension making it hard to breathe. Was there a place for him in this healing process when he still bore the mark of betrayal? As the fires warmed the faces surrounding him, Achan looked up towards the rising sun, casting light not just upon the camp, but upon the paths they would forge together. Beneath the surface of shared stories lay a question that lingered like mist in the morning air. Could this journey of openness, this sacred revelation of human flaws, pave the way to a redemption that was both personal and communal? And in the seeking of wholeness together, how might they unearth the deeper mysteries woven through their testimonies, inviting grace to touch every heart still seeking? As the sun broke free from the horizon, its rays pierced the fog lingering over the camp, illuminating faces still marked by the apprehension of dusk. Achan, with his heart pulsating to the rhythm of anticipation and dread, realized that the gentle whispers of hope shared the night prior were now intermingling with a charge of urgency. Each person present seemed to hold their breath, teetering on the precipice of confession, awaiting an unspoken catalyst to forge their collective healing. Yet, for Achan, the moment felt as delicate as a fragile egg, ready to shatter with any wrong move. He watched as others began to share their past regrets expressed in trembling voices, the familiar aches of guilt and surrender binding them together. There was solace in their uniformity of struggles, yet as the stories spilled forth, his own tremor of truth remained locked within, an unseen wound that threatened to fester if not released. Elders, warriors, people of Israel, Joshua called out, his voice rising with the strength of the dawn. To forfeit the burdens we carry is to reclaim our strength. True unity is born from honesty. Together, we rise above the remnants of our missteps, allowing our vulnerabilities to transform into shields of resilience. The ripple of agreement surged among the throng, emboldening those reluctant to speak. One after another, they shared fragments of their trials, a montage of hardships unfolding beneath the sun's golden embrace. A widow spoke of her loneliness. A former soldier revealed the scars of war and loss. A merchant who once cheated confessed the emptiness of his gains. Each confession glittered like jewels of ash turned to treasures, redefining who they were in light of who they could become. With each revelation, Achan felt the walls of his heart quake, tremors of overdue honesty moving him closer to the edge. Once again, he questioned the repercussions of revealing his truth. What would it mean for the community he longed to embrace if they knew of the sin he had committed? He recalled the fateful moment of temptation, the coveting of a cloak and gold. It had felt so innocuous then, yet now it laid heavy like a stone upon his soul. As Achan wrestled with his thoughts, he remembered the words of the prophet, uttering warnings of the cost of concealed sin. Be sure that your sin will find you out. He wondered if his longing to belong could truly bear the weight of his unconfessed actions. Would his truth become a poison to the fellowship they cultivated, or could it instead echo the healing they collectively sought? In the midst of his turmoil, a figure approached, drawing near. It was a young woman, her countenance both gentle and resolute. I have been burdened by my choices, too, she shared, her voice carrying ripples of understanding. When we hide from one another, we isolate ourselves from the grace that could move within this community. Fear is a thief that robs us of our healing. Her simplicity resonated deeply with Achan, sparking a flicker of resolve to come forth. What if I can only offer my brokenness? He whispered to himself, wrestling with the fear that had stifled him for too long. The question hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Perhaps what he needed was not fear but acceptance, just as he had witnessed surrounding him. Before Achan could decide, the assembly began singing a hymn of praise that rose like incense, pooling above their heads, inviting their surrender and worship. He closed his eyes and let the melody wrap around him, permeating the spaces of doubt within. It was as if they were weaving a net of voices sturdy enough to hold his confession. It enlivened his spirit and sparked a final resolve within him. Just as he felt the weight of his burdens ready to be lifted, a presence drawing near sparked his attention. Joshua was moving through the crowd, his keen gaze seeking out those who remained subdued. Today, we are held accountable to ourselves and to each other, Joshua proclaimed. For in transparency, we light the way not only for ourselves, but for those who might walk behind us. Achan's heart raced as Joshua's gaze landed upon him, as if drawn by a divine current. Would he dare to meet the call of community, to embrace the power of vulnerability in the face of communal trust? With renewed courage swirling in his heart, Achan opened his mouth, but the momentum of the gathering crescendoed around him, leaving him at the threshold of revelation. Was this the moment to unveil his truth, or would silence once again tighten its grip? As Joshua's voice lifted into prayer, Achan stood on the precipice of understanding. In a space where the fragility of human nature was laid bare and embraced with love, could his hidden darkness find the light it so desperately needed? And if he stepped forward, how might the shock waves of his confession reverberate throughout this tapestry of fellowship, ultimately transforming not just his fate, but that of all wrapped in the warmth of this shared journey toward grace? As the dawn broke, stretching fingers of light across the assembly, Achan stood poised at the edge of revelation. The stories shared the courage and vulnerability spilling forth like a river had washed over him, breaking the last dam within his heart. It was as if the embers of communal confession sparked something profound within, igniting a flame that could no longer be contained. From the moment Joshua spoke of honesty fostering strength, Achan felt the dormant seeds of courage within him begin to stir. Each voice lifted in unison was a call to authenticity, beckoning him closer to the truth that had haunted him for far too long. No longer could he deny the weight of his choices. They had bound him in chains, yet they held a paradoxical power. In acknowledging them, he would not simply unburden himself. He would illuminate the paths for others in that sacred gathering. He glimpsed the possibility of transformation not just for himself, but for the people before him. A ripple effect was taking shape, their stories of weakness intertwined with the flicker of hope burning brightly as they opened their hearts. Achan understood in that moment that hidden shadows could either condemn or become sources of healing near the light. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, Achan drew from the well of newfound strength. It consumed him, giving voice to the silent cries of his soul. As he stepped forward, the apprehension weighed upon his chest, still heavy yet invigorating. He felt as if the very air crackled around him, infused with the sacred promise of possibility and redemption. "I have hidden from you," he began, quaking slightly yet resolute. "I am Achan, son of Carmi, and I stand before you a man marked by shame. I have sinned against the Lord of Israel. I coveted the treasures from Jericho, a beautiful mantle, silver, and gold. I took them, burying them among my possessions, believing that I could claim joy through greed, while simultaneously severing our bond with God. My silence has cost us dearly." Gasps rippled through the crowd, but Achan continued, his voice weaving a thread of connection with each confession. "I've lived under a shadow of remorse, and when we fell in our next battle, I felt that weight tenfold. It was my sin that led us astray. I hid in fear, believing that disclosure would bring only scorn. I realize now that shame and isolation are greater chains than any punishment could ever be. I stand before you not just to acknowledge my wrongdoing, but to seek your forgiveness and to seek the light of God together." In that moment, a profound stillness settled across the assembly. Achan's words, once a source of dread, transformed into an offering of hope, a bridge over the chasm of despair that had threatened to pull them all under. Each member of the congregation felt the weight of their own struggles, the shadows of their hearts echoing Achan's plight, a collective understanding dawning amongst them. With the confession resting heavily in the air, Joshua stepped closer, the leadership in his eyes a beacon of compassion. "Achan, your voice has become a testament to our shared humanity. In your honesty, may we find the courage to face our own shadows." He turned towards the assembly, inviting them into a moment of reflection. "We stand as one, imperfect but striving for grace. No longer do we hide in the dark recesses of our hearts. Instead, let us bring forth our fears, our failures, and let our shared truths be the currency of our restoration." And as the sun rose higher, the community stirred restlessly but resolutely. One by one, people began to share their own confessions, some small, some large, yet each resonating with the beauty of vulnerability and trust. With every revelation, the walls that had held them captive began to crumble, leaving open, tender places for healing to seep into their lives. Achan's heart quaked, understanding deeply the gravity of this moment not only for him, but for all. Their lives were intertwined, woven together by threads of faith and faltering, each confession joining like a tapestry, each voice harmonizing into a melody of shared salvation. In time, Rahab stepped forth again, emboldened by her own redemption story. "The walls I've known were built by choices, and as I sought safety in my past, I found chains of another kind," she proclaimed. "But we are not defined by our pasts. We are transformed by our present." Her words glimmered like precious jewels, urging others to reflect upon their journeys. Achan watched as the magic of their confessions took on the form of a sacred memento revealing of deeply rooted truths leading to unexpected transformation. They were not merely victims of circumstance, but was a collective of souls yearning to reflect the love and grace of the divine. Their vulnerability was an invitation for God's Spirit to move more powerfully among them. "That I seek your forgiveness," Achan said again, his voice breaking as he met the eyes of those he had once wronged. My choices were my own, and yet we are all bound through our prayers, our laughter, even our sorrows. Let these moments wash over us and cleanse us. The resolute embrace of forgiveness enveloped him, as with trembling limbs, some reached out towards him, hands extended, not in condemnation, but in solidarity. In that act of grace, Achan felt chains fall as the warmth spread through the group. One soul forgiving another, hearts unlocking not with resentment, but empathy. And in that binding moment, an irrefutable truth crystallized within Achan's heart. Forgiveness does not erase the past. It shatters the barriers erected within, creating a new way. As the assembly unified in prayer, a medley of confessions and newfound commitments can grasp the weight of responsibility that now lay before him. To carry forth this legacy of connectedness, vulnerability, and grace into a promising future in time, as the sun streamed through the gaps, painting the ground with pathways of light, Achan understood that their collective journey had only just begun. This chapter not only marked the end of the weight he bore as an individual, but became the dawn of a movement of faith rooted in the acceptance of imperfections and the embrace of one another. Achan breathed deeply, letting gratitude fill him. They were not just a people of Israel any longer. They were a community reborn through the power of honesty. With renewed conviction, Achan resolved to carry this flame of hope forward, a legacy transcending generations, inviting all to grapple with their truths and transform them into something beautiful, bright, reflecting the very essence of divine grace. In reverberations of their gathering, the world would hear, in every confession, there is redemption, in every shared journey. An opportunity to reveal the deeper beauty of humanity's embracia, truth that binds, releases, and ultimately transforms.